Welcome to Hiring Happy Humans, where we talk about all things HR with a variety of folks, from CEOs to community partners, sharing up-to-date trends, best practices, and our wild workplace stories. Each interview is designed to leave you with the knowledge to keep your sanity. I'm your host, Dawn Sipley, of Sipley the Best. Thanks for joining in, and let's jump into this week's episode. Welcome back, everybody. This is Dawn Sipley with Sipley the Best on our podcast, Hiring Happy Humans. Now, today we're taking a little bit of a creative twist to talk about how publishing a book can help your business's bottom line. And Jacquelyn Lynn is joining us today. I want to say that over. Jacquelyn Lynn is joining us today. She is with createteachandinspire.com, and she has got some amazing information that she is going to share with us and teach us about book writing that we might not know is even possible. You may feel inspired to write a book, or you might not even have that inspiration sparked yet, but we're here today to give you some fresh ideas on how writing a book can really promote your business and really pose you as an expert. Welcome, Jacquelyn. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you, Dawn. It's so good to be here.
So we met a number of years ago through the Christian Chamber of Commerce, and we both served. You're an ambassador serving the local chamber here in Central Florida. So I've been able to get to know you through that. Just curious, how did you come upon the Christian Chamber in the beginning?
You know, I don't know how I got on their email list in the first place, but I had been on the list for years, and really? I kept getting emails that would, here's a speaker, and I'd be like, oh, that sounds so good. I don't want to go. I don't want to drive across town. I'd like, but I don't want to go by myself. And finally, a friend of mine said, why don't we go? And I'm like, will you drive?
That's all it took. All those years, we just needed an Uber for you.
Yeah. And anyway, what's funny is it was her first time too. She did not join. I've been going ever since.
The Lord brought you to us through her. I absolutely love that. That's amazing. So I have always enjoyed my conversations with you. You have been involved in the writing of so many books. How many books have you published? How many have you written? How many have you ghost written? Tell me about the world of book writing and some of your qualifications around that.
Well, I have either written and authored under my own name or ghost written for other people about 45 books.
Wow.
And I started writing professionally, doing magazine articles. And this was a long time ago when freelance writers could actually make a good living freelancing for magazines. Publishing world has changed, and it's not so easy to do that now. But I have had more than 3,000 magazine articles published, and it's just been, I love it because people pay me money to learn things and then share it back with a different audience.
Wow.
So it's like, oh my gosh, if they knew how much I love doing this, they wouldn't pay me, but they do.
That's amazing. Well, you're obviously very, very talented at it, having done it for so long. That is some crazy numbers there, girl. I don't know if you realize how wild that is to me. So do you have a certain kind of genre or area that you write in for those 45 books? Do you have a specialty, or are you really, since there is a learning process involved, open to anything?
Well, most of the books that I've done have been in the business and some personal development arena. That's what I do for clients. My client niche tends to be business people. I've done a few outside that niche, but it really does work better because I understand business. So when they come to me, I know what to ask them. What do you want to accomplish with this book? And let's walk you through the process of how you can make that happen if what you want is even realistic. I have done on my own some inspirational books because I felt called to write them, and I did. And I've done one novel, and I keep promising myself I'm going to do another one. I actually was starting to work on the second one, and I got a few chapters into it and realized that I had created two of the most unlikable characters ever. And I'm like, nobody's going to read this because they're going to get it. They're going to get into chapter 2 and say, I don't like either one of these people. I don't care what happens to them. And I'm like, they're not going to stay with me long enough to see them being redeemed. So until I figure out how to fix that, that novel's on hold. Anyway, but back to the business side. That's really, I think my gift is helping business people use books to promote themselves, promote their companies, get their message out in a positive way.
So what do these business owners use these books for? Because most book writers I know are public speakers, and most business owners I know are not. So how are these books being utilized to help them?
Well, along the same lines. I mean, the public speakers use a book to establish their credibility. Business owners can do the same thing. I have a client that I'm working on my third book for him right now. And the first book that we did, he was launching a holding company, and he needed funding for it. And he was also, that holding company was going to be doing some significant acquisitions. So for him to have the book, to be able to say, I did this, I did this, I did this, you know, Mr. Investors, you should trust me with your money, and companies, you should trust me to let me buy your company, because I'm also the author of this book. And
so it assists them in the acquisition stages.
Exactly.
And funding stages.
It was a credibility builder. And so there are, there are a lot of reasons you can write a book. And that actually, this little book concept of it is, it's a popular trend right now where people are writing and publishing little books, small books, tiny books. It's what they're, anyway, they have a small amount of content. They are not, anybody who follows publishing don't confuse them with something called low content books, which are basically books with blank pages or lined pages. These have valuable content, but not a lot of content.
A quick read, then something that you could read, leisurely over the weekend or something like that.
Oh, in less than a half an hour.
Oh, gracious.
We're talking really short stuff, tiny. Because think about it. If it's got 8,000 or 10,000 words, that's depending on what you're reading, that's 4, 5, 6 magazine articles, and you're done. They're very narrowly focused. Now you can make them longer. A typical full-length book, particularly in the business arena, is going to run 40, 50, 60,000 words. So these are about a quarter to a third of that, maybe a little shorter, again, depending on what you're doing. They focus on, again, a very narrow topic. And you can use them to establish your own credibility, to teach your audience things that they need to know. Here's a thought. If you're a law firm and you have 5 different major practice areas, maybe you've got family law and real estate law, but it's 5 different practice areas. You can do a tiny book that promotes each one of those practice areas. You brand it for your firm. You, because they are small, you can get them printed for less than $3 a copy.
Okay.
So they're a great giveaway. People tend to keep books longer than they keep scratch pads and coffee mugs.
Okay.
And that teaches your prospective clients things that they need to know. I mean, if you're a personal injury attorney, for example, you could do a tiny book on what to do if you get injured in a public place.
Best practices around, or,
Yeah,
ultimately how to be a good customer. I was actually just talking with the CEO of Tech Rage, a local company here in town that does IT. And this is so funny, said they had done a tiny book. And I had never heard of this before. And she said it was really short. They always give it to their clients after a presentation or a proposal is done. And the book is, the ways that companies have tried to cut corners on IT, and then the horror stories on how it costs them later.
I love it.
From the servers to the hardware to the software, and just goes through these different scenarios. Super, super short and sweet. Leaves them with it. They flip through it and they go, oh no, I'm doing all these things. Like, it's just absolutely brilliant. I really love it so much. And she said it's just a giveaway, and people actually request it because they have business friends and they go, I think they don't know what they don't know. Can I get that tiny book from you? So they can realize like what cutting corners can cost them. So, it's so funny that twice in one day I would hear the same concept.
And because it's such an effective concept. The thing is, if they had done a bigger book, nobody would read it.
Right, exactly.
We're busy. We want everything in tiny little bites. Now,
that's
and
why
I don't
TikTok's
know what's
so popular.
I don't know if they have also done this, because you can do your tiny books in print format, also electronic format. And I recommend, even if your goal is to give it away, let people download it for free on your website, go ahead and set yourself up as a publisher on Amazon and put it on Amazon.
Okay. How much would something like that sell for? Like $4.99 or?
Yeah. $4.99. You do $4.99 or $5.99 for the print copy, $3.99 for the ebook version. You might make a little money on it, but here's the thing to remember about Amazon. It's one of the coolest search engines for people who are ready to buy. People, when people go on Google, they're browsing. They want a little bit of information. They may or may not be serious. Right. When people get to Amazon, they're ready to buy.
They got their credit card out.
They don't even need it out. I mean, Amazon knows all of my credit cards. Right. I just click on which one.
True.
But seriously, and you need to remember that Amazon is like that, and it costs nothing to set up an Amazon account. You'll have a little bit of production costs, which you probably already have,
right,
in preparing your tiny book. And Amazon is also a good source for printing. If you don't want 500 or more copies of the print version, let Amazon just print on demand.
Right. Yeah. Well, they started as a bookstore, so I'm glad that they're still in the business. That's fantastic. So, ease of acquisition, confidence in financing, proposal support. What are some other areas that these tiny books can be used for?
How to use your product.
Okay.
I mean, different, depending on, of course, on what you've got. You can do, let's say you're a fence company. How about doing a tiny book on safe games for the kids to play in the backyard, or backyard entertaining?
Right.
There are so many things. One of the best ways to get ideas is to go to your customer service team and say, what are people asking about? What are they complaining about? Go to the sales team and do the same thing. What are they asking about? What are they complaining about? And these are all opportunities for you to communicate information to your audience that stays ahead of what they want to know. So your tiny book can tell them everything you wish they would ask that they don't know, because they don't know to ask.
That's fantastic. So, okay, I'm feeling inspired. I want to do this. Open a Google Doc and just start typing my little heart out? Like, is there software that you should put this stuff into? Do you just start typing, what is the first step that someone would take in writing a tiny book?
Well, of course, is to get the book written, and whatever works for you. I mean, okay. There are there are software programs out there designed for writers. I would do it in whatever word processor you do it in. You can speak it. I mean, some people, when they put their hands on a keyboard, they freeze, or they get very formal and
try to sound fancy.
Yeah, and don't do that, because you want it to be correct, but you don't want to put your reader to sleep. You want to talk to them in the book.
Conversational.
So you might do that. You might dictate it. You might, as you're organizing it, think about, what do I want to say? Put that down, and then look at the question, and then speak it into a recorder, have it transcribed, and then smooth it out and edit it. You do want to get a nice cover. And, if you know somebody who can do that, that's great. Otherwise, Fiverr. There, go online, and, there are also a lot of book cover templates out there. If you Google that, you'll find ways to get a nice looking, affordable cover.
Have you seen Brene Brown's video about her book covers that she did?
Do I need to watch it?
Oh, you do. It's hilarious. So she, of course, has been wildly successful. So her book has been duplicated all across the world in different languages. And so when that happens, the graphics also need to change. And it's funny, the different cultural differences. Yeah. It's just a hoot. It's hilarious. As a writer, I think you'll appreciate the trauma that it put her through, when you really go, an elephant? Like, that's not what I pictured when, I thought of this kind of concept. So you'll have to look at that. Okay. So they jot it down, they voiced it out. Is there a good transcribing software that you can download to a laptop? Cause I know I've tried to use my computer's free thing, and I end up speaking another language through that app.
I use a transcription program called Temi. It's TEME, and I'm pretty sure it's .com. Okay. And you upload your audio file, and within a couple of minutes, they'll send you back the transcription. And they have 2 levels, and one is a little more accurate than the other, but the cheap one that is not as accurate is still pretty darn accurate. It costs you $0.25 minute.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, yeah. So if you're talking a 30-minute recording, it's going to be what, $6-7. And then you can, then you go back onto their website. You can kind of play around with it, massage it a little bit. And it's really cool. Up on their website, you can play your audio and watch the transcript go through. So if they didn't hear you correctly while you're in there, you write with it, you can fix it, and then you download your transcript, and then you continue to work with it when you get it on to your computer. And it's a great resource.
Great. TEME.com.
TEME.com.
All right. Thank you so much for that. So I love this tiny book idea. It feels like it's really accessible to anybody. Do you have to be a business owner to want to kind of do this, or can just people in business do it for fun?
I think they could do it for fun. I think, we have, Mark Goldstein and I do a lot of talking about, and he is the former president of the Christian Chamber, for any listeners who don't know. We do a lot of talking about marketplace ministry.
Yes.
And you could do tiny books on things that you do that are related to marketplace ministry. They could be devotions. They could be stories about things that, where you've seen God work in just an absolutely amazing and unexpected way. So you can do inspirational tiny books, and again, they're affordable to do. let's see what else. I mean,
what were those? I'm a couple years younger than you, but I remember in the 80s, there were like literal tiny books that were like Bible stories and stuff. What were those called? They weren't called tiny books.
I don't remember what those were called.
Not pamphlets, but
yeah, they were literally.
Yeah, right.
And for
we had hundreds of them around the house for some reason. I don't know why. My grandfather would just give them away like all the time, and they would get delivered to the house. So it must have been some kind of ministry, and I don't know if that was local and just us, or if it was just national.
And there was actually, I think this was in the 90s, might have been in the 2000s. There was a series of, I think it was Little Red Books, it was called.
Okay.
And then it was the Little Red Book on and the topic. So yeah, I mean, if you have something like that is kind of, nagging at you creatively, brand it, and then you just put it out when you have it.
Yeah.
And but you're once you start doing the first one or two or three and you keep on doing it, you've got your audience there. Because they, if they like what you did before, they're going to buy the next one.
So what are some pitfalls that people run into when it comes to writing? Like, you've been doing this a while, you've coached lots of amazing people with writing books. What do you, as an expert, just see people run into over and over again?
The writing side, it's tensing up, I think, is what they do, and feeling like they have to be too formal, too preachy. Again, you want to have a conversation with your reader. You want to engage with the reader on you want it grammatically correct. You want it to make sense. You want the spelling correct, but you want to talk to your reader. You're not writing a textbook, and you're not delivering a sermon. You're not delivering a lecture. You're having a conversation with the reader. So ask the reader questions and then you answer them. But, on the publishing side, the mistakes that I see are sloppy production, not doing the proofreading. And spell check does not count as proofreading. And I can't tell you how many times over the years, I've said, there's mistakes in this. Well, I ran spell check. Yeah, but spell check doesn't know the difference between WHOLE and HOLE, Well, it's getting smarter. And I absolutely recommend using some online grammar checker, but even that's not enough. That really looking at it, having a human look at it. Along with that is the design. You need to make sure it's designed well, and using your you can put together a nice ebook and even a nice looking print book just using Word,
right?
If you know what you're doing. But for example, you have to watch the leading. That's the space between the lines. And your standard space between the lines in Word, they're too close together to really be eye-friendly from a book perspective. Right. So you want to do a little research on book design, or hire somebody to do it for you who knows how to do it.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest piece of advice there is to stop and look at books that are out there and try from the point of view of what makes this appealing to my eye,
right? Versus,
oh, this just looks like big sheets of gray, or it's too much. I don't, there's not enough margin. Don't be afraid of putting white space on your page.
Okay.
It's important. Okay. That white space is important.
Okay. Now, what if someone just wanted a ghostwriter? They just had a really great idea, but they're busy and they just can't, but you know, they kind of have an outline or something. That's what ghostwriting is for, correct? Is that something that you do?
That is something I absolutely do. Okay. Yeah, I would say, I'm thinking probably at least 20 of my books have been ghostwritten, maybe more. I tend to lose count.
And not to give away your pricing or anything, but between you and all your cohorts in the industry of ghostwriting, what would someone expect if they were doing a traditional, you know, 30 to 60,000 word book? How much would that cost someone if they wanted to make that investment and not do that themselves?
That can, well, and it depends on the writer. Mm-hmm. And it depends a lot on, for me anyway, it depends a lot on the subject matter, how much the named author, the client, has when they bring the project to me. You can find ghostwriters who will do a standard sized book for maybe $25,000, and then they can easily go up to the six figures.
Wow.
And again, it depends on
how much heavy lifting has to be done.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah, it's easy breezy and light, or is it technical?
Yeah. And how much the client even knows what they want. I mean, I've had clients come to me with, I need a book. And I say, well, what do you want it to be about? I don't know. I just need a book. Okay. Well, that client's going to pay a little more money because there's a whole lot of work that goes into the development of the concept, the idea, the where are we going to go? What, you know, you go back again to what do you need to accomplish? And whether you're doing a standard book or a tiny book, you really need that end in mind before you get started, because you need to know where you're going. One of the things that I recommend to anybody who's thinking about a book, again, tiny book, standard book, massive book, is do a business plan for your book. Just a little mini, you know, here's my market, here's my budget, here's, you know, here are my resources, here's the competition, you know, here's what I want it to do, and get that all down in writing. And you may not show this to anybody, but if you use a business plan structure, that forces you to think about everything you need to think about, so that when you're ready to start, you can actually start and produce something. You don't get partway into it and think, oh, where am I going here?
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would, I can imagine starting it like yours and getting 2 chapters in and just going, I'll figure it out later. That was.
Oh, I had the whole outline written for that book. It was just, the more I wrote about these people, the more I'm thinking they're just not likable. Okay. I mean, one is just a nasty person. The other one was a criminal. You know, now they reform in the book, in the story, but not soon enough to get people to read that far.
Oh dear. So I absolutely love this, but I am curious about one thing. I have not authored anything yet. I do have an idea up in my little noggin, but as I've kind of explored the idea, there seems to be some kind of self-published versus picked up and published or big house publisher, and people are kind of judgy around it. What is that?
Well, it is traditional publishing.
Right.
Okay. There's traditional publishing on one end, total self-publishing on the other end, and in the middle there's something called hybrid publishing. And essentially, a traditional publisher pays you an advance, and they essentially buy the rights to your book, and then they publish the book. They used to provide you with a lot of marketing support. They don't do that anymore. And if you look at even the big name authors, the bestseller John Grisham kind of authors, they do most of their own promotion. So you are not going, if you want a book out there and you really want to drive your book sales, you need to have a marketing plan for it. So that's traditional publishing kind of in a nutshell. And then self-publishing is you do everything, or you contract out with people to do the pieces and parts, and pull it all together. A lot of work to self-publishing. In a nutshell, simple thing, when you traditionally publish, you will earn maybe 10 to 15% of the sale price of your book for the copy sold. When you're self-publishing, you earn 100% of the profit of it. So it depends on what you spent.
So your foot and your costs and all
that. Yeah, but you're taking all the risk. And then, so you kind of have to recognize the traditional publishers are taking a risk. It is more and more difficult to get a traditional publisher to pick up a particularly an unknown author.
Right.
Speakers have a much easier time getting a traditional publisher because they can commit to buying back several thousand copies of their book, and the traditional publisher says, well, you've just relieved us of our risk.
Right.
And there are some fascinating the other thing to think about here is that you can start with self-publishing, and if you do a good job, a lot of times a traditional publisher will want to pick up your book. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
Love Robert. He's a great guy. That started out as a self-published book that he wrote to promote his board game, the Rich Dad board game. And a commercial publisher picked it up because it was selling so well. The book 50 Shades of Grey, not recommending it, but it started out as a self-published ebook. And it has become a little mini industry of its own.
Right.
It's a series and all of that. So granted, those are exceptions. Okay. The other thing that I do want to touch on very quickly, because I want to make sure people recognize the risk here, in the middle of self and traditional publishing is hybrid publishing, pay to publish. It goes by a number of different names, but these are the publishers who act like a traditional publisher, but you pay the cost.
Okay.
So, but they do all the work. They do the editing, the design, the production. They put it out under their imprint as the publisher, and then they pay you royalties. Now their terms will vary by publishing house, and the risk there is that a huge percentage of them are just not ethical. They charge a lot of money for things that
inflated pricing.
Yes.
Right.
And the other thing to remember is they have absolutely no vested interest in making your book a success, because their costs are covered before your book ever hits the presses. So in fact, I got a message just the other day through my website, and with someone we're going to have a conversation next week, and she was saying that she used a hybrid publisher for her first book, and they gave her a poor editor, and they didn't do anything marketing wise, and they charged her a lot of money. So I really am a huge proponent of self-publishing, and it is true that there are people who are real snobs about self-publishing, and I see this when I'm out on social media, and it's like, no, your book isn't real if you don't have a traditional.
Right. That was kind of the gist that I got, and I was like, am I detecting? Like, it's like, oh well, are you gonna get picked up, or are you self-publishing?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I haven't decided that
what
yet.
I recommend that people do is create their own publishing company. And this is what I walk my clients through.
Oh, interesting.
I tell them you need to name it, and don't give it your dog's name. Don't give it your kid's name. I mean, make it sound like a real publishing company name, and you put that on the title page. and that's how you open up your accounts with Amazon, and because you also want to make sure your book is available ebook through Apple Books and Barnes and Noble and all. And this is not rocket science anymore. It used to be a big challenge, but it's pretty easy to do. In fact, I had seen so many people get ripped off by these hybrid publishers that's why I wrote a book called The Simple Facts About Self-Publishing.
Okay.
And that book is available on Amazon. It actually, I kept writing blog posts about here's how to do this. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I've got so many blog posts.
I've written a book.
I've got half done. What do I need to do to flesh out the rest of it? And basically what I do is explain, not the step-by-step like book design or whatever, but why it's important to have a good designer and some of the things that you need to watch for and that kind of thing. So, and why self-publishing has gotten a bad rap because people do it sloppy. And
okay.
there's no excuse for that.
Right.
So if you
anybody can do it, so it's not quite as vetted or whatnot. Okay. Yeah. So you had shared with me before we got on today that you had a giveaway for our audience today. Tell me a little bit about that book.
Well, that book is, it's part of my conversation series. And my conversation series is a series of books where I do an interview with a subject matter expert, and then I transcribe it and reorganize it and edit it and put it out there either as a straight ebook if it's really short, or an ebook and print book. And one of my early books in the conversation series was with the person who was my editor when I used to write books for Entrepreneur Media. And we laughed because, I mean, my gosh, we could get on the phone and talk about a comma for an hour, like it's just so. But we had and she is a consultant now too. So she talked about from her perspective as someone who has been on the traditional publishing side and as a consultant, traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, and self-publishing. And you can get that for free by going to my website, which is createteachinspire.com and then /publish. So it's createteachinspire.com/publish. And you can download a free PDF of that book. And that'll give you a lot of the basics about publishing, and some links, some resources. Marla gave a lot of associations and links to pages that have pricing on them for editing.
Resources, really.
Lots of resources in there.
Okay, love that. Thank you so much for giving that to us today. I really appreciate it. So I always like to ask all of my guests one question at the end of the podcast, and that is, what is some professional advice you would give your younger self?
My younger self, professional advice would be to not be as impulsive as I was in career. I mean, impulsive is great. It's fun. Hey, on Friday afternoon, be impulsive to say, I'm going away for the weekend and I'm going to go someplace I never went. Impulsive is not good when you get mad at somebody and quit your job.
You were that person, Jacquelyn.
I was.
Oh, no, the HR in me is disappointed. I don't need this job.
I don't like you. I'm going to go someplace else.
Oh, you sassy little thing. I love it. That is good advice, kids. Don't just get fluffed up and quit your job. You might regret it the next morning when you get your bills. Solid advice. Well, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for the free giveaway of get your book published. It can be found on your website, createteachinspire.com/publish. Yeah. Thank you again for
Dawn, this was so much fun. Thank you for inviting me.
Not a problem. Chat soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks again for spending time with us today. If you want more HR stories and resources, go to simplythebest.com to join our newsletter. That's SIPLEY. Until next time, stay happy.